Hey guys, my name is Ryan and welcome to HitScan. Patch 1.07 is here, and unlike the few patches I suppose we've had recently, this one's a beefy one. There's multiple nerfs and buffs in here, including changes to Sage, Killjoy, Breach, and the Vandal and Shotguns, and we're going to go through them all now, starting with probably the more intricate one, I guess, to an extent, Miska, Sage's changes.
Yes, Sage has received a bunch of changes, and I didn't really expect these types of changes. I'm very excited for some of these, so let's just get to it. The heal has been changed. The heal has been reduced from 100 over 5 seconds to 60 over 5 seconds. This was suggested quite a while back, so I'm happy they've made this change, but really interesting. The self-heal as well of that has been reduced from 100 over 5 seconds to 60 over 10 seconds, so really lowering that potential to self-heal. I know Morelos talked about this on his stream before, and it's kind of emphasized here in the developer explanation, saying our goal is to reduce the amount of healing done throughout the round, disincentivize Sage from self-healing, and make it more expensive to do so, because the self-healing part is kind of the duelist's job in some people's eyes, at least, and Phoenix kind of has those properties, right? So I feel like it makes sense to have Phoenix and Reyna kind of reserve the self-healing stuff being more powerful to them. They've also changed the slow orb for Sage, and yeah, the size has been reduced by 30%. This should slightly reduce the power of slow orb and increase intentionality. Right now, slow orb unintentionally covers a lot more ground than it should be if aimed properly. I think that's really cool. I really like when you bounce a slow orb properly and it hits an area in a really specific way to just be super effective. So rewarding that further is probably good, but I could also see that bringing down Sage's win rate quite a bit, because I feel like that is where a lot of her, I guess, consistency and reliability comes in.
The most interesting change comes to the barrier orb, which has had its cost reduced from 400 to 300, which I do like. But this is the interesting part. It now has a new effect with fortifying barrier, where when you form the wall initially, it has 400 HP, meaning it can be broken a lot quicker than before. But after 3 seconds of the wall being up, the wall becomes fortified to have 800 HP. And the dev comments say our hope is to increase counterplay on barrier and reduce the strength of the wall during reactive use, which again is pretty interesting. A lot of teams and a lot of players don't like to put the wall straight away to block off a choke, for example. So this again could punish bad Sages with bad use of a kit. So I do see Sages like pick rate and win rate absolutely tanking over the next few weeks.
I think the barrier orb one is actually really interesting, because it's something that I've run into a lot recently. I've, much like you, fallen into a horrible evil spiral of playing Split over and over again. And the barrier orb can be used like in the middle, the mid of Split, if you're defending with Sage, to just throw that up really early on. It's pretty hard as an attacker to deal with that, because the angles are so rough to deal with, and the defenders have a lot of options by going on top of the wall from B heaven, or peeking when there's a hole in it from the mail room there, or peeking from top mid in the vent room there as well, or just standing really close to it next to the wall as well, which is all pretty difficult stuff to deal with for attackers, and you really got to spend a lot of utility to deal with that. And that's something that's effective even in, you know, sort of low mid sort of levels of ranked play, and even maybe like sort of when you come into plat diamond play, I see it's still being used. And it's one of those things that, yeah, like you said, it's not really the intended use for the barrier orb to just throw it out like that out of nowhere and just go, all right, that's something for them to, you know, be annoyed over. But with this, you can react to that, you know, sort of initial throwdown and just burst the entire wall down before it's fortified. So I like that a lot, actually. Moving on, we have another character. Speaking of Killjoy and taking Killjoy out of the team, Nanoswarm has been nerfed for Killjoy, and so has the turret. We're going to start with the Nanoswarm. Added a brief wind up before damage begins. Okay, they say brief, but they don't actually specify here, so maybe we have some video to show right now. But either way, that I feel like is a pretty big deal, not specifying that, but we'll see how much that is. DPS reduced from 60 to 40. Now that is a huge deal. Visual effects have been added to make it easier to spot the grenade on the ground. Stealth audio range has been slightly increased. Now the audio, I know, is something that not a lot of players had even noticed. I remember bringing it up with various players, either randoms or just friends of mine, and that's something that people hadn't even really been thinking about, apparently, at least some players out there. The dev comment reads, Killjoy's Nanoswarm has been a terror to play against. It's meant to be a strong stalling and post-plant tool, but we feel it's currently dealing far too much damage and players aren't able to engage in the desired counterplay. And I really agree with all of that. The Nanoswarm is incredibly strong. The amount of times where I've thrown one down on a side to deny a plant and I've gotten like 2 kills with one of the Nanoswarms without maybe even hitting my alarm bot is just a little bit too high. I feel especially on Ascent defense A side, she's really strong. So really happy to see these changes. We also have the turret, of course, which no longer is revealed by Sova's recon bolt at all. Now, I noticed that before with this, you could just throw out the Sova recon bolt and the turret would just be revealed through certain walls and things like that. It was just based on the range of the Sova recon bolt, not the line of sight. So that's a bit odd, but either way, now it's completely changed. Now you can't see it at all with the Sova recon bolt, which probably good. The turret isn't that strong other than that. More effectively shoots at an enemy's last known location. Don't know what that means exactly. Maybe there's some video that will clarify. Maybe you'll just notice it in game by being tagged by the turret a little bit more often, but we'll see. Either way, interesting Killjoy changes. I think the Nanoswarm was what needed to be nerfed, and that has been nerfed. Well, a character that definitely has been going through a lot of other changes though is Viper, and she's up next with some interesting I don't even know what to call it. It's a lot of changes and a lot of explanation, so you want to get into it?
I think the more interesting one is that you can fire the toxic screen, which is her like smoke wall ability, through and set it up whilst in the buy phase of a round, and it will go through spawn barriers. I don't know if the enemy team will see this go down necessarily, I assume not. So there is some nice like subtle plays you can make. I think that's the issue with toxic screen generally, is you see it get planted and you immediately know where the Viper is and what they're trying to do, especially if you're defending and they're attacking. It's a pretty big telegraph to say, hey, we're coming to attack on your side. As well, it now goes up faster along its full length once it starts to form, and the dev comments say this change should allow Viper in many situations to get her wall placed pre-round and then join her team before the barrier drops, or creates uncertainty about her location when the round begins. Increasing the speed of the wall rising should reduce the awkward period that occurs after it starts to rise, but isn't covering all of the angles Viper and her allies would expect. Also, when it comes to decay, a big thing about all of Viper's smokes is the allies get affected with Viper's Pit, Toxic Screen, or Poison Cloud. They get hit by the negative effects of decay, granted at a much slower level, but they still get hit. Up until now, decay on all smoke abilities no longer affects allies. This is mainly targeted towards Viper's Pit and should help reduce some of the unintentional collateral damage that she can cause to her team, while also opening new strategies for playing around her role as a team. Viper's Pit is also now going to show up on the minimap when it's deployed. And overall, Miska, I do like these changes, but I think just like at this point, Viper is a bit of a novelty, and it's going to take more time than buffs to bring Viper into it. It's going to take a while until people really get to grips with her and what she can do. But this is the probably best patch that we have for her.
Yeah, honestly, I'm really happy with how they've been changing Viper over time so far. I don't think they are over like nerfing or buffing anything really on this character at all, and I think just the way they've been progressing with the changes makes a lot of sense. So super happy with that so far. Just don't know if that's gonna make the character any more popular, but hey, we'll see. Another character that's not been too popular, unfortunately, one of the lowest picked characters in the game actually, up until this point, is Breach, because he's just been a bit of a pain to play, I guess. Either way, let us know why you haven't played Breach, but maybe now he'll get some more love as he's had a bunch of interesting changes. Note as well from the devs, these are not all the potential Breach changes we want to do, but as part of our ease-in, intentional balance philosophy, we want to be measured. Stay tuned for more, potentially. So, starting off, Flashpoint has been changed. Off-screen flashes now match behavior of other flashes in the game and apply a minimum amount of flash more aggressively. Charges increased from 2 to 3, and they've reduced the wind-up time from 0.6 seconds to 0.5. I like the reduction of the wind-up time there, just to make it feel a little bit better, even if it's not like a massive reduction. It's still, you know, quite a bit relatively speaking. Charges increased from 2 to 3. That's pretty big, I think. Like being able to spam them out like that, that could be huge. And the dev comment also reads, Breach should be a choice pick in offensive entry and breaking utility. While the Flash's power was pretty good, too few charges were holding him back on being able to provide his value for his team. Considering he needs teammates to capitalize on his flashes, this should make up for that cost by simply having more of them. I think that's great, because sometimes if you use a flash and your teammate wasn't quite ready to go in, or just sort of mistimed their peak, or was just a bit too late with it, sometimes you just wasted like a really valuable ability, and that's that. So really liking that. Rolling Thunder as well, his ultimate has had his detonation delay between the blasts decreased from 0.3 to 0.255. I think this is actually a bigger change than it might look on paper. I think it's going to be pretty hard to get used to, because you're kind of used to how quick or how long it takes for it to hit you if you see, you know, the sort of cracks on the floor, right? So you might be able to get out of it, or just ahead of time move away from it, but, you know, stay in it for a little bit, peek, and then, okay, now I gotta hop out of this if I don't want to get hit. That timing is going to be changed now with this, so it'll be interesting to see how that affects players. And concussion has also been changed. Concussion now de-scopes players and prevents rescoping. So all in all, good stuff. Really liking that Breach is finally getting some changes, the Swede getting some buffs, and just across the board, really good stuff. I think this might help a lot with Breach getting picked more, especially with, you know, changes to other characters this patch. Like, you kind of have some nerfs to characters like Sage and Killjoy, which I wouldn't say are like, you know, ultra popular characters like Killjoy, but Sage definitely is. And you all of a sudden you have a lot more players to work with that might be looking to try out other characters, and a lot of people have been wanting Breach to work and to be just better across the board. So this might be the patch if you want to start playing Breach for sure.
Well, I think we're just with flashing characters like Breach, Rain, and Phoenix, they're just not really played all that often anyway. And with so many people complaining about the Operator, which has no nerfs in here, by the way, this is just a subtle way in able to deal with it, right? I guess we could talk about that in more detail some other time, but when you have Breach having more flashes, his concussion effect with his fault line and Rolling Thunder de-scopes players, I mean, literally that's only going to be in the case for Operators the majority of the time, right? So there's some very specific, poignant changes to that, and I think Breach is going to be the forefront in countering this Operator meta, whatever the hell you want to call it, going forward. But when it comes to weapons, there's one in particular that's had a lot of attention on it recently, as well as the Operator, that being the Vandal. A lot of people complaining about his first bullet accuracy, that it just doesn't really pair up well with the Phantom. I think the Phantom had an 85% pick rate in the 2 Ignition tournaments this weekend, so it shows that there's definitely a preference on the gun that fires more and has less distance firing in the case of the Phantom. But the Vandal is getting a buff, and I do like these as a Vandal user. The firing rate has been increased from 9.25 to 9.75, and also the damage has been increased from 39 to 40. The goal is to bring the Vandal to closer competition with the Phantom, and the devs believe that these weapons aren't that far off in competition, and hope that these changes will do that. And when it comes to other changes to guns, obviously a lot of people have been looking at the shotguns. There's been changes to 2 of them, as well as how the shotguns work altogether.
Yeah, overall quantity breeds quality, and you got that with the shotgun pellets and the fire rate stuff from Vandal Phantom discussions. And one thing that the shotguns were pretty good at was just tagging people. If you don't know tagging, it's basically when you hit someone at like a little bit of range, or when you just hit someone with any bullet or any pellet from any gun, and you slow them down a little bit. You know, it's that annoying effect that you always rage at before you die. And the new tagging has been, well, sort of adjusted now for all of the shotguns, and now includes 30% slow for 0.5 seconds on a smooth curve going back to normal speed. All in all, this should feel quite different in games, and you now when you hit an enemy past the 10-meter mark, it will apply this new tagging value to them instead of the standard tagging. So all in all, I think that's gonna make it feel a lot better. I know sometimes I get tagged by a judge from like massive range, and then some Vandal finally peeks out around the corner and headshots me, and that just feels kind of bad. It's not what the shotguns are supposed to do, and that's also what the devs kind of explain in the dev comment part of this patch notes as well. When getting headshot by a shotgun too, the aim punch will be lower than all the other weapons. So just kind of quality of life stuff playing against shotguns, making them a little bit more fair and not doing things that weren't really intended to do. And especially that thing about getting tagged by a shotgun and then finished by a different gun, that stuff can be really annoying. So I'm happy they made these changes, and also some good changes to the shorty and the judge.
Yeah, both the shorty and the judge have been nerfed. The shorty first, its first fall off range has been reduced from 9 meters to 7 meters. The updated headshot multiplier has been brought down from 3 times to 2 times, which now makes it the same as the judge and the bookie. And the devs say that it's their goal to make the shot users work a little bit harder for the kills they get by requiring them to be a little bit closer to their target. For the judge, the price is being increased for the gun from 1500 credits to 1600. The desire here is to see if giving a judge a little hit paired with the other shotgun changes moves the needle when playing against this gun. We'll continue to monitor and make other changes if necessary. Sorry, Tens. In regards to other stuff that's in here, there's some quality in life stuff. If you're a streamer, you can hide your name, for example, and a few observant changes, but none too much that's going to make the esports scene a little bit easier to watch. Just some more bits and pieces, but that's because we have a metric ton of changes in here that I'm a really big fan of. Some of these are brutal. I think the Sage nerfs are just ridiculously too much too fast in some cases, but I understand why they've taken this approach considering that Sage has been nerfed multiple times, and none of them have really been enough. So if you are a Sage main, this is gonna hurt more than any of the other patches in the past, but I'm certainly looking forward to seeing if the Viper changes do anything at all at this point. If Breach decides to be more of a mainstay pick, certainly in the pro scene where operators are kind of running riot, but obviously how Killjoy is going to do now that the BS side of her nanoswarm isn't really going to be a thing anymore.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Is it gonna be enough for Killjoy? Because if you combine it with a clever bot placement, maybe it won't really do too much. One thing I'm a little bit worried about as well when it comes to nanoswarm, and that not being enough of a change actually, is that sometimes you can throw it and hide it sort of inside walls. I don't know how many map changes and tweaks they've done like that, but there's plenty of them on Ascent. There's some of them on Haven. There's some stuff there that could be fixed and tweaked with just map geometries and not let those nades sort of sneak into spots where they shouldn't be. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe they are enough, maybe not. Hard to tell, but we're gonna find out in game. I can see the YouTube comments in front of me though already about Sage for sure, because this character keeps getting nerfed and has been the top pick in all of Valorant since the release of the beta. Just so you know, if you're wondering why Sage is getting nerfed so much, she has been the highest pick rate and win rate since the beta. So there's a good reason behind it. It's just, is this too much now? Is she gonna be too bad? So they've kind of kept nerfing her over time. Maybe now we're finally gonna drop below the sort of 50% win rate to like something that's, you know, not too bad at all. So we'll find out, but either way, thank you very much for watching, and if you want to check out the full patch notes, then you can do that on the Valorant website or via a link in the description, and that's about it.
That's everything that we wanted to go over. We might have like a roundup of our thoughts after checking out these changes more in-game and stuff, and maybe even talking to a couple of the devs in the future too about why these changes have come to be and what's next after this. So let us know what you think in the comments below, like and subscribe, take care, we'll see you soon.